So now the Stockton police come in, and they do their investigation, but they could find no J.C. Brown, no hide or hair of him. They could find no crime committed because after interviewing the 80 people, they found out he never took a dime. And the people were adamant about the fact that they believed that this J.C. Brown was worth $40 million and that he would have provided a yacht, but something made him change his mind.
And we don't even know if that was his real name now, do we?
Correct, right. Now, after reading this story, George, I thought he was a charlatan. I thought this was a con. I figured I'm going to be writing about a con man. Mm-hmm. So I decided I was going to spend 2 weeks in the New York Public Library with the 8 clues that I read on the internet. And I got from the Stockton Record, I got the original newspaper article that was written on June 19th of 1934. So I went with that and what I read on the internet, and I took those 8 clues that I had, and I went to the New York Public Library, and I started to research what information I had to see if I was going to come up with something or it would still remain a legend after my couple weeks of research.
What did you find?
Well, interestingly enough, the first clue that I had was the Lord Cowdray Mining Company. So I decided to see if there was a man by the name of Lord Cowdray. Lo and behold, I Googled the name. There was a Lord Cowdray. Initially, his birth name was Sir Wheatman Pearson. Now, Wheatman Pearson is now the Pearson Company. I believe they're Penguin Books. They were they're a big oil conglomerate. And I said, well, wait a minute. I've got the guy. And then I looked a little further, George. I said, well, let me see the age. Well, J.C. Brown was supposedly about 79 years old when he arrived in the office of the editor in 1934.
79? He was way up there. Stay with us, Stephen. We're going to come back, finish up the rest of our story with you, and then we'll take phone calls with you, too, because I'm sure you're fascinated with the Mount Shasta story. We'll be back. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Noory as we talk about the legend of J.C. Brown and Mount Shasta with Stephen Sindoni. Stephen, you're talking about the clues, and the first being, of course, the mining company. Go ahead.
Right. Well, the first clue was the Lord Cowdray Mining Company. And lo and behold, the company did exist. I was able to Google it, and there was the company. And I found out that the man of the company was named Lord Cowdray, but he wasn't named Lord Cowdray initially. He was, as I mentioned earlier, born Sir Wheatman Pearson. So after learning this, and I went to the New York Public Library, the genealogy department, but after learning this on their computer upstairs, I went downstairs in the genealogy department, and I started to go through birth records, death records, border crossings, marriage, and anything I could on Sir Wheatman Pearson to find out if he, in fact, was the J.C. Brown. Well, the first thing I learned, he was about the right age. I went to the border crossings, and I found about 10 border crossings into the States. I found a couple through Mexico, and I was looking for 1904 specifically. Mm-hmm. I found 1904 coming through Laredo, Texas border. When I found that on the manifest, I noticed that he came in with 2 other civil engineers and J.B. Body, who's also a civil engineer. So those names, J.B. Body's name stuck out. The other 2 civil engineers I was going to research later. I came up a little roadblock there because in that library they didn't have his death records. So I went to the Mormon church, tried to get it. I couldn't get it. I then went to the Science Library on 34th Street, and I was able to find his autobiography. Once I was able to pull the autobiography for Lord Cowdray, I discovered that he died in 1927. So now that kind of put me at an obstacle course because the man I'm looking for shows up in 1934. Mm-hmm. So I go back to the counter and I ask a woman by the name of Marguerite Nealon, who works there at the Science Library at 34th Street, if she could find me a book on the American Society of Civil Engineers, because in the autobiography of Lord Cowdray, it mentioned he was a civil engineer. And I'm thinking, well, whoever this man is has to be a civil engineer, because Lord Cowdray came in 1904, just like the man in the legend J.C. Brown claims. But I couldn't find him coming in 1907. So I said, well, he had to have told somebody, or maybe it was somebody other than the initial engineers that he brought over on the first trip. Well, Marguerite Nealon found this book for me. She said, you know, it's funny you say that, but a week ago I came across a book on American Society of Civil Engineers. She says, wait right here, I'll get it for you. So she went and got it. I thumbed through the book and noticed that Lord Cowdray had died in 27, as I had learned, and then I looked further and I found 3 other lieutenants that he had who were all civil engineers. And I looked at the names to see if the names matched the 1904 crossing through Laredo, Texas. One of the 4 names matched. It was J.B. Body.
J.B. Body, yeah.
Now, J.B. Body was actually John Benjamin Body, which I learned through the microfilm. So now I wanted to study more of J.B. Body. So what I did then, I then got another microfilm to read, and I was able to find his memoirs through the American Society of Civil Engineers, which put his death at May 23rd of 1940. So here it is. I have a man who was born in 1867, who was about 70 years old at the time, 1934, that the man shows up at the Stockton editor's office. So I've got a man who's late in age, who worked his whole life for the Lord Cowdray Mining Company, who came in from Mexico with Lord Cowdray in 1904. So I says, maybe I've got a bullseye here. So I then took the memoirs with me, and I went back to the library on 42nd Street, and I decided to now look very closely at all of J.B. Body's border crossings into the United States and through Mexico. What I learned and discovered was that in 1907, just as J.C. Brown had claimed that he had found the treasure on the second trip up to Mount Shasta, when I went through J.B. Body's second border crossing through Laredo, Texas, I found him coming into the country with 3 other engineers that were working with him in Mexico for the Lord Cowdray Mining Company. So now I realized I had a bullseye, that the first time he came up with his boss, who gave him permission to go back up there in 1907 to bring 3 civil engineers with him. One of the civil engineers he brought with him was from South Africa. One was from Germany, born in Austria, and the other fellow was born in Scotland, all working in Mexico at the time. So he brought these 3 engineers through the Laredo border. They got on the Union Pacific Railroad, and they took the train up to Dunsmuir, California. And from there, that was a big mining town in those days, they went 11 miles up to the mountain, where they then went up to the mountain to discover what they found up in the hollows of Mount Shasta.
Gee, well, so J.B. Body, you believe, was truly J.C. Brown?
Yes.
All right. Now, the claims, of course, are incredible. What other proof do we have that these people still reside down there? Because J.C. Brown, J.B. Body, never saw the individuals, right?
Right, but he saw the mummifications, he saw the skeletons.
Is it possible that there's nobody down there anymore?
That's a possibility. They might have moved further because of human intervention. I will tell you this. Upon further research and study, I realized why J.B. Body and his party of civil engineers decided to keep the secret. And basically, it was because of the American Indian. Our Native Americans knew early in the 1840s, when the first colonialists went through that area and told them about the people that were living in the hollows of the earth. In 1851, Reddick McKee, one of our colonels from the United States Army, and this is documented by his official recorder. The guy's name was George Gibbs, and you can look this up. This is on record. You can Google this. But there was a treaty to be signed with 13 of the tribes in Mount